The Duna, the Dunav, the Dunarea, the Dunai, the Donau, the Danube. The river has many names because it flows through different countries, different cultures. The Danube flows directly through 10 countries, many of them newly created or recreated. It starts in Germany and Austria, prosperous states of the new Europe, and rolls through the struggling economies of Slovakia, Hungary, Croatia, Serbia, Romania, Bulgaria, Moldova, and Ukraine. The Danube is Europe's most important water artery, flowing from the heart of Europe and emptying into the Black Sea. The Danube Basin is home to 80 million people. The river is a major trade link, a tourist and recreation route, a wildlife haven. It is a vital source of hydroelectric power. It is a font of drinking water for tens of millions of people. It is also a sewer for human, industrial, and agricultural waste. This journey from Germany to the Black Sea took place in the autumn of 1999. Our vessel for the first part of the journey from Germany to Yugoslavia is the Delphin Queen. In normal times, the river is navigable all the way to the Black Sea, but the recent wars of the region meant that these were not normal times. This floating symposium was inspired by His All Holiness, the Ecumenical Patriarch, spiritual leader of the Orthodox Church, who is committed to help restore our planet to environmental health. This voyage is also a mission to heal the spiritual scars of war. An international group of experts has been gathered at this workshop session to look for solutions to the Danube's environmental problems.
Cooperation in environmental matters.
And the people who live there on the water, they take water out from the Danube and put it in a pot and have it boiled. Yeah.
And the second problem was, of course, the pollution of the rivers.
But environmental problems seldom stand alone. On the Danube, they are worsened by economic distress, ethnic hostilities, and the trauma of war.
One thing again that might be worth doing is finding examples of generating economic activity for people in countries like Bulgaria or Yugoslavia or whatever else that are beneficial to the environment and allow people to have a decent
earn a living, so to speak.
livelihood from that.
Before, during the communist time, they wanted to change the river, to increase the water level or to deepen the bed of the river, because the boats were not EU compatible. How stupid it was to change the river instead of to change the boats.
For thousands of years, the Danube shaped the life of the people of the region. For the last 100 years, people have shaped the Danube. For the most part, this has not been good for the ecology or for the people. Philip Weller runs the Danube program for the Worldwide Fund for Nature. He is passionately dedicated to the river and to the people of Danubia.
Well, the problems of the Danube are ones that can be categorized as alterations to the physical structure of the river, as well as pollution which has been added to the river. Too much attention has been given to the sort of pollution side without enough attention to the river as a living system, the floodplain connections. Pollution, there has been both industrial toxic waste as well as the nutrients that are coming from sewage or industrial facilities. There has been general improvement throughout the system that those levels are being reduced. What has unfortunately not happened is changes in a significant way with respect to the natural dynamics of the river.
Over the last century, major changes to the river were engineered to favor growth in the traffic of large commercial vessels.
Throughout the Danube, we have basically a straightening and narrowing of the river channel, forcing the river to move the water along quickly. We're finding, though, that this straitjacketing of the river means that the river loses its ability to provide life for us. The floodplains, the flowing up of water out of the river up onto the land is an essential element in terms of recharging groundwater. It's an essential element in terms of reducing the amount of nutrients and pollutants that are in the river. It's a very, very important means of maintaining the biodiversity that is adapted to these conditions.
The Danube's greatest service to its population, the flushing and cleansing of water drunk by millions of people, happens underground, unseen, largely unappreciated. At a Bavarian monastery, a monthly Sunday morning service binds people of different faiths together in a prayer for the protection of the river and the life it services. The symposium began with a prayer dedicated to the Danube River. Flowers were released to float downstream for each country of the river. It may be a good omen that the massive tanker swerves to avoid the flowers. In Passau Town Hall, the Patriarch Bartholomew confirms his commitment to the river.
Temporarily relieving those who selfishly pollute the river to the unscrupulous and irresponsible dumping of harmful substances into the rivers is substantially harming the next generation. We therefore must learn to respect humanity. It is morally unacceptable to burden others with our wastes. This is the only way to help ensure that the Danube becomes a road of life for all. Otherwise, they are in danger of ending up being bearers of death.
After the picture postcard city of Passau in southern Germany, the Delphin Queen heads downriver towards Austria. The Danube is an international waterway, and Germany and Austria have canalized the river to the Rhine, creating a commercial artery that flows 4,000 kilometers through the heart of Europe, linking the North Sea to the Black Sea. The symposium pauses in its course to recall the dark history of the region. In the peaceful countryside near the Danube, Nazis built a concentration camp and set about the task of ethnic cleansing. We continue downstream to Austria's capital, Vienna. Vienna has a rich 1,000-year history. Its position between the mountains and the Danube flatlands make it a confluence of trade and cultures. It was a world leader in music, science, art, and literature. A dozen languages were spoken in its streets. But, devastated by 2 world wars, Austria seemed to become just another small country of Middle Europe. But now, at the beginning of the 21st century, Austria seems once again poised to play an important role in Danubia. Among the countries of Europe, it has a very strong green movement. On the first 1,000 kilometers of the Danube, there are over 50 dams. Many of these are meant to curb the seasonal flooding, but they often just push the torrent further downstream. In 1988, to control flooding, Vienna completed a vast project which divided the river by constructing an artificial Danube island. But a plan to construct a hydroelectric power station downstream was blocked by massive protests from Austria's strong environmental movement. Now, most of the Danube region east of Vienna has been turned into a nature preserve. Currently, the Worldwide Fund for Nature is unblocking channels to restore the river's natural flooding.
We would be now in the water, since this high here. And 2 years ago, this was a traverse. There was no hole here. It was just blocked. There was a dam here, and as a result of this blocking, the water couldn't run. And as a result of the water that couldn't run was the sedimentation. And we opened these dams here so that the water can flow again. And there's a dynamic that should push away all the gravel. We want that there's more water and less land.
In fact, water is Austria's treasure. From its rivers, lakes, and glaciers, Austria has an abundance of fresh water. In an era of dwindling resources, this small country has enough to supply Europe's 370 million people. It may well be essential to the future of the continent. The Delphin Queen heads east to the new state of Slovakia. Like all the small countries of Central Europe, Slovakia has always been torn between a desire for independence and the need to be protected by greater powers. In the last century alone, Slovakia has been part of Austria-Hungary, part of Czechoslovakia, independent, and part of Czechoslovakia once again. In peace and war, its boundaries have fluctuated. In 1993, Slovakia split from Czechoslovakia and is now independent once more. The Slovak Republic is a country of sparse resources, especially energy. In the 1990s, the government managed to build a nuclear reactor, despite vigorous protests from environmentalists and from neighboring Austria. This nuclear facility is built on a tributary of the Danube. Towards the end of the communist era, Czechoslovakia, together with Hungary, began to build the Gabčíkovo Dam as an energy source. When Slovakia broke away from Czechoslovakia, the Slovaks continued alone. The project changed the course of the Danube.
This was Danube before here. Here in this powerhouse, 4 turbines, Kaplan turbines, and we can use the energy from this powerhouse.
The Gabčíkovo Dam is not only about energy, it is an assertion of Slovak nationalism and independence. Within the country, there were protests from environmentalists, but they were ignored.
This is a very huge, large water dam, which badly impacts biodiversity in this very precious area of floodplains, forests and sidearms of the Danube River, which was unique, and the enormous area of about 40 square kilometers of floodplain forests and ecosystems were completely cut down.
The Danube floodplain feeds underwater aquifers which constitute one of the largest drinking water reservoirs in Europe. The impact of the dam and diversion canals on this critical water supply could be catastrophic. For part of its length, the Danube forms the boundary between Slovakia and Hungary. The dam complex was originally intended to be a joint project between the two countries, and Hungary even began construction. This was still in the communist era when defying the authorities was dangerous. Nevertheless, Hungarian environmentalists challenged the government.
Then we organized the protest in 1985. According to my knowledge, this was the first ever organized protest in the Eastern Bloc. At that time we have been beaten up by the police. And at the next protest we had 70,000 supporters. And that was really the biggest step in softening up the regime. So the changes started in the same year, in 1988. In 1989, the government stopped the construction at the Hungarian territory. It is difficult to imagine that an environmental group can achieve more. The problem was that in the Slovakian side, they did not stop the construction, and they actually built a dam. And only on Slovakian territory, and they diverted the river in Slovakian territory. In this map, you can't even see, in a very slightly spot, you see that both sides of the river is belonging to Slovakia. And in that section, they have diverted the river, and 20% of the river is going back to the original riverbed, and 80% is going to an artificial navigation channel and is going through the turbines to produce electricity. And now the two governments have to find a solution of a compromise in order to have more water in the Hungarian side, because the wetland, which is a unique wetland, is drying out.
The dispute over the Gabčíkovo Dam is very serious and even led to talk of armed conflict. The matter is now before the International Court at The Hague. Basic to the Danube's status as an international waterway is recognition that any major interference with the river's flow affects all countries. Like all the countries of the region, Hungary suffered greatly from the two world wars and the communist regime that followed. But since the fall of communism, Hungary has started to become integrated into the economy and defense system of Western Europe. Due to the NATO conflict with Yugoslavia, the Serbian stretch of the river was blocked. As the Dolphin Queen headed back upstream, we traveled by road through a Serbia scarred by shells and bombs. This area, where Hungary, Croatia, and Yugoslavia converge, is of special importance to Philip Weller.
Here, just a little ways downstream, the Drava River enters the Danube. The Drava is one of the main tributaries to the Danube River. And at the confluence of the Drava and the Danube rivers is one of the most spectacular floodplain ecosystems that exists, and the most important in terms of maintaining fish populations in this central part of the Danube. And you can still see in the nature park the artillery embankments where the front lines exist. It's also an area that perhaps is better protected than any other ecosystem or region in this area because it's heavily mined. Large number of houses, the community infrastructure in this region was totally destroyed. But there is the potential here to create a trilateral conservation scheme that involves Hungary, Croatia, and Yugoslavia or Serbia on creating what here could be a peace park.
The plan is to develop fishing and forestry in conjunction with ecotourism.
Peoples of differing nationalities, differing religious belief, differing perspectives can come together and combine their interests in trying to ensure that natural base is retained. And I think if this experiment is successful, and we certainly hope that it is, it's not something that will happen overnight, but it is something that can and should be an example both for the Danube River region, but also for other parts of the world in how to reestablish both community and communities that are based upon maintenance of the natural ecosystems in war-torn areas such as this.
A welcome offering of bread and salt begins a reception given by local priests. The presence of Orthodox and Catholic priests, rabbis, and Muslim clerics reflects the good relations between the different ethnic groups of this province. NATO considered Novi Sad a strategic target because of its Danube bridges. The city was hard hit, even though it was known to be a center of resistance to the Milosevic regime in Belgrade.
So you have a beautiful overview of Novi Sad, you know. The bridge has been bombarded 6 or 7 times before it collapsed, and you see now that is the main obstacle for the river flow, because the whole construction of that huge bridge, because it was a railway bridge and it was a transport bridge with 2 ways, you know, it is under the water now.
NATO's bombs also hit Novi Sad's oil refinery. Thousands of tons of oil and chemicals were released.
The soil is heavily contaminated, and it is sinking every day and closer to this groundwater, you know. So if we have to do something, we should do immediately, you know, to remediate this soil and not to allow contact with the groundwater, because then if you contaminate aquifer, that's lost for, you know, years, maybe decades.
The people of Novi Sad built a pontoon bridge as a temporary connection between the divided city. Now, after the fall of Milosevic, money is expected from the European Union for bridge construction. It will also be a bridge towards Serbia's integration into Europe.
Who should be held accountable, whoever they are, and from wherever they may come.
Clergy of the different faiths, Christian, Muslim, Jewish, gather on a point overlooking the Danube for an interfaith prayer for peace. The site chosen for this gathering is dedicated to the Second World War. Here are engraved the names of the victims from Novi Sad who died in the war against fascism.
We have condemned racism and nationalism, now wholeheartedly pray that the tempest of war has passed, so that even in this dreadfully tormented region of the Balkans, there will prevail the beloved peace. Furthermore, the Danube, which has been disastrously wounded, will continue to flow and perform its peacekeeping role in this region.
We are now back on the Danube, traveling east of Yugoslavia in Romanian waters. We have switched to a Romanian vessel. Writer Neil Asherson reflects on the nature of modern warfare.
Frontiers, declarations of war, it's all in the past. It's past. And formal invasions or even informal invasions, I mean, they don't happen. But what happens now is this horrible business of suddenly armed militias, thugs, guerrillas, you know, all sorts of people appear and say, who is running this village? You know, kill him, kill her, you know. Who are you? Which sort are you? And all this kind of thing. There's warlordism. And so the struggle, unfortunately, goes on, but it goes on in a quite different way. And it's much more difficult to control, that sort of thing.
Now we are passing through the region known as the Iron Gates, which used to be a barrier to river traffic. Historical markers speak of great changes in how the river runs.
We have here the Tabula Traiana. This is a very important story about the building of the Roman roads.
This tablet was laid in the time of the Roman Emperor Trajan. Romania derives its name from the Roman conquest of the 2nd century AD. The Romans built a road along the river for their legions and for commerce.
This is the original one. But he was built up, but the water coming
Has come up.
Yes, the really road is under the water.
The Roman road.
The Roman road.
And now
the road is now submerged because the 2 Iron Gates hydroelectric power stations have raised the water level. Human restructuring of the river has had a profound effect on fish life, especially the sturgeon, a huge fish once plentiful in the Danube.
Remember at the beginning somebody mentioned that the last sturgeon that they saw in Vienna was 150 years ago?
Yeah. There is that big sturgeon, 200-300 kilos big. This cannot pass through since this gate have been built. It's opening up.
Human impact on the region's fish population has been devastating. Not only did the locks and dams prevent the migration of giant sturgeon, but pollution from industrial waste, cyanide spills, chemicals from NATO bombs, grandiose drainage schemes, and overfishing have impacted the fish population all the way to the Black Sea. The Iron Gates hydropower station is the biggest in Europe and the 2nd largest in the world. Petruta Moisi is a Romanian environmentalist. She talks about the Iron Gates hydroelectric project and the island it submerged.
A very big project, and we Romanians all felt proud for it. Of course, it was the electricity problem. Romania, you know, tries hard to find alternative sources for energy, for electricity.
Construction of the Iron Gates 1 hydroelectric project was completed in 1971.
The history has dramatic aspects as well. The building of the hydropower station was possible after flooding the Adakale Island. Adakale Island was considered a unique ecosystem which was lost forever.
All along the Danube, sewage disposal is a major concern, with 192 towns and cities dumping into the river. Joachim Bendoff is on the International Commission for the Protection of the Danube and is involved in comprehensive plans for reinvigorating the river and its economy.
Whereas here the Danube, you have to see the whole basin, because the pollution finally ends up in the Danube. So the Danube itself, contribution to the Danube, you have it here in Novi Sad, Belgrade, Bratislava, Vienna, so you have certain pools along the Danube, but more important is what comes in from the hotspots and municipalities, cities, which are in the whole basin.
So what can you do with the 192 hotspots? I mean, what's the program, and how much will it cost, and how long will it take?
Yeah, it's about $5.7 billion. So it's not only a question of pollution reduction, but a question of pollution reduction, and environmental concern is very closely linked with the introduction of new modern technologies, best agricultural practices, and a restructuring of the whole, let's say, socio-economic situation. If the countries want to join the European Union, they have to apply a certain number of environmental standards, and this is very positive. It is positive in the sense that if there is new development, this new development has to go in line with environmental standards. But I do believe that thinking should go to investment. Europe, the European Union, should invest in the transition countries for future development and future growth of the region, to integrate the countries in the European economy and to make it really a part, an equal part of Europe.
Right, I know.
At this point, the Danube forms the boundary between Romania on the north shore and Bulgaria on the south. We make a stop at Vidin. Among our group is one king, Simeon of Bulgaria. Since the fall of communism, King Simeon's private estates have been restored to him, and he has promised forest and parkland to the nation. He is a dedicated environmentalist. King Simeon has been in exile since 1945, but now he is able to visit his homeland. 2 years after this symposium, the king's party would gain a majority in democratic elections in Bulgaria. He has been deeply disturbed by the wars that have devastated the Balkans during the last decade.
The Danube is an international waterway, so it must be cleared. And here I'm very subjective about it, because Bulgaria is directly penalized, because we're on the other side of the destroyed bridges and suffer from it severely. And our economy had just begun to improve when we were faced with this unexpected and most unfortunate development.
By blocking the Danube, NATO punished Bulgaria and all the countries of the region, not just Yugoslavia. Our journey through the lower Danube reveals a dismal riverscape of rusting hulks, vessels with nowhere to go, and idle docks. A fragile post-communist economy worsened by the bombed bridges of Yugoslavia. Romania and Ukraine share the delta, and we are passing from Romanian to Ukrainian waters. The divisions of Eastern Europe are evident in the frequent passport checks.
I need more reports.
These kind of sort of bureaucratic difficulties are something that are common here, and perhaps it's quite appropriate that we have to live it as well as anybody else.
Moldova's share of the Danube is so short that it is easy to miss it. We are welcomed into Ukrainian waters with folk music. Like all the countries of Danubia, Ukraine has dozens of minorities. In this part of the delta, there are thousands of ethnic Germans and Bulgarians, driven or enticed here over the centuries.
Bulgaria doesn't lay claim to any of this territory.
Yes.
No, Bulgaria's policy is that we respect the borders we have, and we hope that others will respect them as well. But we've never claimed these territories. This was contested between Romania and Russia, the Soviet Union.
Ukraine has the worst environmental pollution in Europe. With few resources, it is struggling to restore a delta savaged by demented schemes of the communist era, when wetlands were drained for agricultural production, blocking their function as cleansing filters.
We have zoned these islands. We try to create the nature which is as close to the nature itself as possible. The water level this year was very high, and as the result it damaged the dikes and the dams, and we are not going to save these three islands as not damaged as they should be as nature.
Значит, у нас на этих островах в данный момент прекращены все виды хозяйственной деятельности.
At the moment, any kind of economic activity stopped here is restricted.
Да.
And this is one of the things that we are not very comfortable with. There are areas of the delta that are fenced, and nature, you can't fence nature.
Philip Weller continues his crusade for integrating local people into protecting nature.
What true conservation involves building in the local people, allowing them to understand and be a part of the conservation activities, to see themselves as part of the conservation.
Pollution carried by the Danube drains into the Black Sea, adding to that region's problems. His All Holiness, the Ecumenical Patriarch Bartholomew I, summarizes the accomplishments of the Danube journey.
We should like to take this opportunity to inform you of the follow-up activities of Religion, Science and the Environment, Symposium 3, The Danube, a River of Life. Great interest was expressed in the Danube, in both its spiritual and ecological value. Therefore, we invite you and your congregation to join in a project to promote future development of the Danube, benefiting both the people and the environment of this great river. The aim of the project is to develop a network of the religious institutions to work together on common projects along the entire Danube River. Such a network will strengthen the cooperation between different countries and religions. The endeavor will be titled The Danube, a network for a living river. Some possible activities to be initiated by this project could include organizing a public event about the theological and ecological importance of water and the Danube, launching a common publication about the importance of the river from a theological as well as an ecological viewpoint, developing a management plan for the environmental operation of monasteries located along the river, organizing training courses in agriculture and forestry with relevant information provided in the form of a booklet, applying environmentally responsible techniques in forest management in order to include them in the worldwide forest network of the Forest Stewardship Council. Truly believing that you will share in our keen interest and enthusiasm, we hope that you will be able to join us in developing this most valuable project so that together we will be able to continue the spirit of the Danube Symposium.